Hello, welcome to Art Classes with Jen. Today we are going to start a three-part class on using pen as our medium. So today is part one, and today we're going to focus on pen and line. So first off, I want to make sure everybody has their supplies. See our other material. So I had suggested that you need at least one pen. Now, if you have the multi-set of pens, that's really lovely to have. So I'm going to flip this up. And if you can tell here, all these have different numbers, and we're going to kind of explore those a little bit here in a minute. I also had suggested a mixed media paper. Now, if you're using just some copy paper today, that's all right too. Mixed media paper just has a nice texture to it. We're going to open this up and show you. So it kind of has a different type of texture. Not sure if you can see real well, and it's a little bit thicker. So it works really well for all the different mediums that we often work with. All right, so to dive in, we are actually going to start with a PowerPoint. So let me go ahead and get that PowerPoint pulled up for you. All right, so here we are. We're going to start talking about line work with pen. And if you can see, you have three different types of pens here, and the little squiggles right here actually show us how thick each tip of these different pens will go ahead and write. So I want you to keep that in mind as we're going through. So first off, a little bit of a review. Anybody that has done art classes in the past, perhaps you remember talking about the elements of art. And anybody who this is new, we're going to touch on the elements of art because they're very key to when we're creating our own artwork. So as you see here, the elements of art are the building blocks used by artists to create artwork. So these are things such as line, shape, form, space, color, value, and texture. So we use the elements of art when we're creating our own artwork. We are also going to look at the principles of art or design in the next few classes and as we continue forward. So these are principles or design that help create strong artwork. So we use pattern, we use rhythm, we use balance, we use emphasis, proportion, variety, and unity. So line is our focus today. A line is a mark made on a surface that joins different points. Lines can vary in length, width, direction, and shape. Artists and designers can use lines for many different things. And there's also lots of different types of lines. So we can see here, we have descriptive lines, which tell us about the subject. We have expressive lines, which we use to express emotion or create a mood. Orientation. So are our lines going from top to bottom? Are they going from left to right? Where are they put on the page? Are they on our page? Are they near the top? Are they near the bottom? Are they close together? Actual versus implied lines. So this is when we have two drawn lines, which are actual lines because we put them on there on our paper with our pen. And in between, we will notice that there is a void of color. So for our paper today, it'll be white. And that white will be an implied line. It looks like a line, but we didn't actually draw it. We also have geometric lines. So these are mathematical lines that are used to make shapes, mathematical shapes such as triangles and rectangles and squares. And we also have organic lines. So organic lines are very free-flowy and they're curvy and they're irregular. So let's take a look at a few different projects here. Now, in these three artworks, we can see how line is being used to create shadow versus light. So here on this far work right here with the lines going up and down primarily, we notice that when we space our lines closer together, we can create a darker area which is telling our eyes that most likely there's a shadow cast here. As we move to the mountains, we can also see how coming from this side of these mountains, there's a light source. And over here, coming from this side of these mountains, there is a light source. And we see that by the usage of lines. The lines on the dark side of the mountains are closer together, and the lines on the light side of the mountains are farther apart. There's different ways that we can use lines. So here we see circular lines. We see wavy lines. We have a circle here, which we use our lines to create depth, giving the circle the illusion of it becoming a sphere, so a 3D object. In this work, we have a combination of circles repeated over and over to create our sky. And then we have different types of lines here in our mountains, again, looking at our light source. And then in this flower here, we see how we can use several different types of lines. In the petals, we have what we consider organic lines, right? They're a little curve, they're not all uniform. And we can see how in different areas they get really, really tight and really, really dark where they're shadow cast. And in the background, this particular artist here is using different variations of length in their lines to create interesting texture and variety. We can also use lines when we're working on portraits. So here we can see how lines are used in this eye. So here we can see that they kind of flow across the shape of the eyelid, and down here, the shape of where the cheek and the eye meet. In the eye itself, we see how tighter lines make it darker. So we have these light and dark areas. And the nose and the mouth here, we can see again how when we put our lines very tight together, we have shadow. And over here on this nose, we're using different directions of lines to create light and dark. And we're going to talk a little bit more on this technique. This technique is called hatching and cross hatching. And if we come to the very far portrait here, where we have the lips and our neck, we'll see that this artist right here is using much more organic, free-flowing lines, but yet they are achieving the same thing. Again, when we use lines over top of each other or close together, we get these shadowy areas. And when we have them further apart, we have these light areas. All right, well, we're going to make some artwork now and try this out. All right, so I want everybody to go ahead and grab your supplies. I'm going to switch the main camera over to the paper. And what we're going to start with is we're actually going to start with drawing 3 squares across our page. So go ahead and grab those while I switch the cameras around. All right, so let's go ahead, and if you are working with different numbers, once you go ahead and get them all out. As we're getting our pens ready to do our work, we're going to go ahead and look at the different numbers. And I want you to go ahead and make some marks across your page as you're trying out these different numbers. And maybe notice what you feel when the pen is going across. Maybe notice if it looks lighter versus dark. And think about how you might want to use these different variations of pens. Once you've tried out your pens, or if you are working with a single pen only, we're going to grab whatever utensil you're going to start with. So if it's a different number than just a regular pen, go ahead and grab that. And we're going to make our squares. Okay, so we're going to do 3 squares across. And they don't have to be perfect. Mine aren't uniform. That's okay. That's not what we're looking at right now. We're going to start with talking about hatching. So hatching is when we make our lines across to start creating light and dark. So when we are doing hatching, we will put our lines very close together if we want a darker area. And we would leave them lighter where we're wanting the lighter area. Now there's the technique of what is called cross hatching. So going one direction and then coming in and going across the other direction. So I want you to start trying these as we're going through them. Thirdly, we can do cross hatching, and then we can come back in and do double cross hatching. So coming in again, getting our light and dark areas. And for this, we're just kind of making it dark because we're playing with how it looks across the page. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and we'll make a circle, and we'll just kind of play with this. Again, doesn't have to be a perfect circle. That's totally okay. We're going to think about how our circle might have more of a curved line, contour line going across the shape of it. So we might start with just hatching, and then we might decide that down over here we have a little more shadow, so we might want to add some cross hatching. And we can continue this forward. So playing with different types of line to achieve light to dark. So if we're saying this is our light source and this is our dark area or shadow, right? So we might want to come in, and if we have some line, we might want to come through like this. Then we're going to continue to add some dark, some more lines to create this dark. And I want you to play with the different directions of your lines and how it can look. All right, so this is just a really quick, how do we do this? We can also do a circle and use only hatching, right? So we can just do our up and down lines and just start placing them really close together where we have dark areas, right? So really close together, and then further apart as we have lighter areas. All right, so we're going to go ahead. I'm going to try making a box. So remember to make a box. Let's go over how to do that. We make our square. We bring these lines out and connect them. We bring another line down here, and we bring this down and connect it. Again, these do not have to be perfect, perfectly drawn boxes. We just want to get an idea of working with how our hatching would come across. Okay, so let's go ahead and keep our light source from the same area, which means we have shadow over here, right? So maybe you even want to bring in this shadow right here, which you can. So if this was the case, we're going to want this shadow down here very, very dark. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to use cross hatching. You can use hatching only if you want, but we definitely want this area very, very dark. And then we might think about it, well, coming up on this side, this is also going to be quite dark. There's no light. There's no light right there. All right, so we start to get that shadow look, just using our line and our cross hatching. Then if we think about it, we probably have a little bit of shadow down in here, but we probably have some light hitting right there. So if you want to do the cross hatching, same type of thing. We're going to bring it in, but we're not going to go all the way up. We're going to keep this light. All right, so now we're going to try something, and we are going to create a value scale. So when we're creating a value scale, what we're talking about is our shadow to light. So when we are working, so today we're working in pen, and pen is monochromatic, one color, but we can create a value scale by adding more lines or less lines to go from light to dark. So I want you to go ahead, and if you have room on your same page, then go ahead, and we're going to draw a long, thin rectangle. So long, thin rectangle. All right. Then we're going to go ahead and say that one side is light, one side is dark, and then the middle is medium. All right, so if we're just doing our lines up and down our hatching, we're going to keep those lines really close together. But as we come closer to the lighter side, they're going to get farther and farther apart. So we might want to come back in, add some darker lines as we go towards the dark. But as we go over to light, it's going to be very little. All right, so this is a value scale. When we talk about value, this is what we mean. We're taking our scale from light to dark or dark to light. All right, so this technique, remember, up and down, is called hatching. All right, so I want you to do it again. We're going to draw another skinny rectangle like this. So it's not going to be super tall. It's going to be shorter. We're going to also say light to dark. And this time we're going to use the cross hatching technique. Okay. So don't forget when you're medium. All right. So cross hatching one way, right? Keeping in mind how close these lines are together, right? And then remember when we cross hatch, then we come in and we go the other direction. But again, as we get towards the lighter, they're going to be further apart. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to apply these concepts. And this time we're going to do it with some mountains. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and draw 3 mountain peaks. All right. And then we're going to draw that midline. We're going to draw that midline. And this one too. All right. So we're going to go ahead and say that our light source is coming from this direction, which means that we're going to have shadow or dark in this side of the mountains. Okay, and you don't need to write the dark to or light. What we are going to do though is we're going to take these dark sections and we're going to go ahead. You can choose to only do hatching, so the one lines, or you can choose to do cross hatching, so adding the other lines the other direction to create our shadow on that section of the mountain. Then you can add a little bit of texture with a couple other lines, again keeping in mind that those are the light side of the mountain is not going to have a lot of lines. It's going to have lines spaced far apart and probably not too many because there's going to be all that light coming from our light source. All right, so there we've created our mountains using our cross hatching. Now we're going to work on a project together where we're going to apply all of this, but we're going to pause very quickly, and I'm going to show you a couple other pieces of work that you can see where they are using line, and that line, those lines close to far apart. All right, so here's 3 different examples on how they're using different types of line. So we can see here in this first one, they have very, very thick lines on this outer part. And as they go in, they have more of a thin line, but they are putting lines very close together where there is shadow. So you can see where it's lighter versus darker. And then in this middle one, you can see how they're using just these straight lines going layer by layer. But as they go towards the middle, do you notice how the lines get tighter and darker so that it really creates this middle dark section? And remember how we talked about implied line? So these white circles here are not actually drawn. They're the lack of pen, and those are our implied lines. And then if we move over to this last one here, we see how you can use different types of lines all together. Very organic lines in this work right here, going in several different directions, but how when they're close together versus far apart, you have different types of shadow. So we're going to grab our pens and we're going to work on just doing squiggles all across our paper. All right, so we're just going to squiggle and we're going to let our just pen really flow. We're going to come in and connect this spot and then okay, you might kind of come through and through again, and maybe you don't want to do that many little squigglies, and that's okay too. We're going to look at this now and we're going to decide how you want to fill in different areas. So this is going to be your homework. This is going to be your project to take away and really, really work on. So I want you to choose different areas. So maybe here where you do some hatching, but it's not really, really dark in that area maybe. But up here might be really dark. And we might just go ahead and put our lines very, very, very close together. And then over here, maybe we want to do a little bit of cross hatching. So I want you to continue to work on this piece, practicing your hatching and your cross hatching and filling in different areas. And again, you might want to leave some of these completely open and just have that white space, and that works as well. But you get to decide how you're going to work with these different lines. Our base lines are all very organic. They're moving through the page, very free flowing. And then we're going to utilize our techniques of hatching. And then we're going to use our techniques of hatching to fill in those different areas to see how we can really get this different type of artwork utilizing this light and dark, but only using our pens. And the reason why we're really focusing on using our pens is because it's a different medium and we really have to embrace a mark that maybe we didn't intend to make because we can't erase it, which is a really great thing because sometimes embracing those marks we didn't intend to make will really just explode our artwork in a whole new direction. So that's our takeaway project for today, is really practicing our hatching and our cross hatching and really trying to explore those different types of lines when we put them close or far apart and utilizing those in our organic line work. So just as a reminder, let's go ahead and pull that back up real quick so everybody can see that. So again, our squiggly lines or organic lines all across the page. And then we're going to go ahead and fill in all the different areas with different types of hatching work. Now in lesson 2, we are going to add an additional technique with our line work, and that's called stippling. So I can't wait to introduce you to project number 2. It was going to be really exciting, and then we're going to use both of these techniques that we will be going through, line and stippling, hatching, and apply all of them to doing a self-portrait in the 3rd session. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you enjoy making your artwork.